everybody. All right, I know that people are still joining, and so welcome. If you're just joining, if you're watching this recorded, that's awesome. Welcome as well. So my name's Kelsey. I'm going to be leading us through today's discussion, which will be the Tale of Merved. If you have wine tonight, it should be this one. This is the 2018 Texas High Plains Merved, also often called Mourvèdre, especially at William Chris Vineyards. But it is a French word, so there's definitely a spectrum of how to say it, depending on how French you want to get with it, or how Texan you want to get with it. But I go with Merved. So I'm doing something a little bit special with this wine today, and there is still time if you'd like to grab a couple extra wine glasses and a decanter. You are free to drink this whatever way that you would like today. We've been assessing wines over the past 4 weeks. You know how to do it. You know how you want to drink your wine. I have mine chilled down very lightly. I want it to be able to come up to temperature in the glass. But I am going to drink this 3 different ways tonight. So if you'd like to experiment along with me, grab a couple of wine glasses. You need 3 total. Or get another bottle of this and try this experiment later. The reason I'm doing this experiment is because we're drinking a blend tonight. This means that in 2 weeks when we drink the artist blend, you'll be able to do this experiment then. So just watch what I'm doing and see if it's something of interest to you. I'm playing conductor today. Let's see. So we are doing Summer Sippin tonight. This is the 5th episode. You should have gotten a brand new pack of 4 wines for this that includes the 2018 Merved from the Texas High Plains, which is what we're drinking tonight. Next week at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, we're going to drink the 2019 Blanc de Bois. After that, we're going to drink the Artist Blend from 2019 as well. It's a Texas Hill Country wine. And the final of the this 4-week period is going to be the Mary Ruth, the 2020, the most recent vintage, which I am so excited to get to. And then there will be another 4-pack because we are doing this all summer, which is very exciting for me. So we've done 4 episodes. If you didn't get to watch those, go back and watch. They were a lot of fun. We're kind of building on these and doing them in 4-week periods that kind of relate to each other. So the last 4 weeks, we talked first about the geography of Texas. Then we talked about grape personalities and how the geography of Texas is going to help define the personality of a grape. Then we talked about single vineyard sites. So when you start to get grapes from a really specific soil type or specific microclimate. And then last week, the last of that first 4, we did the taste of Texas. So we synthesized everything that we had learned and how it came together. This next 4 weeks, we're going to start by talking about how grapes come to be. A grape variety is something like Merved, Cabernet Sauvignon, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay. They're all the names that we know and love. So how those came to be. Next week, we are going to talk about hybrid grapes because it's a little bit different than something like Merved or Cabernet Sauvignon, etc. After that, we're going to talk about grapes and how they come together in blends, especially when they're different varieties. And then the last of this 4-week period, we're going to talk about kind of interesting, unique grapes that you may not have heard of before that we're growing in Texas. So we're going to talk about grapes a lot this month. So we're starting with the basics, which means I have a lot of information for you tonight. If you want to take notes, that's great. If not, don't take notes. Watch it again or forget it all. Who cares? We're here to drink wine together. Speaking of, let's open our wine. And please tell me, you see me looking over here because I have my computer here, which means that I can read all of your comments tonight. So chat with me, please, whether you are an employee with William Chris or Lost Draw Cellars, whether you have been doing these before or whether you are new. Tell me about where you're coming from, what's happening, what you're drinking tonight if it's not the Merved, and tell me about how much you want to buy more of this wine as soon as you taste it. This is a delicious wine that I've become very familiar with. This wine, the 2017 vintage of this blend, is the reason why I'm working at William Chris Vineyards. My story with Merved goes back I am a big, big lover of Merved. I tried it for the first time in Chicago. It's from Spain. And then I got to know French Merveds when I was working at High Street Wine Company in San Antonio, which is where I am now. And that's where I also got to taste the William Chris 2017 Texas High Plains Mourvèdre. Fell totally in love with it. And William Chris totally sucked me in with their fantastic Merveds. If you haven't heard of this grape before, the more you talk with William Chris people, the more you will hear about it. We love Merved, and I know all of you do. Thanks, Mary. Mary was audio checking for me. Thank you very much for letting me know that last week my audio was a little bit off. All right, we have people representing from all over, which is wonderful. All right, so please open your wine. As you're opening, I'm just going to share a little bit of what's going on at William Chris, because last week I tried to tell you what we're pouring in the tasting room, and I understand that my screen froze. So I've just pulled up the menu for you. So this is what, if you made a reservation and came on site, whether you're a member or not a member, whether you've been here before, this is what you would be tasting right now. So you'll be tasting the newest release of the Cinsault Rosé. Then you go on to the 2017 Merved from Farmhouse Vineyards. That is a single vineyard, single variety wine. Then you would go on to the 2019 Artist Blend, which we will be tasting in 2 weeks' time. Then the 2017 Tempranillo from Par Vineyards, which we drank last week. If you want more of it, you'll be able to taste it. And if you didn't join last week, you'll be able to taste it. And finally, 2017 Zinfandel from Paca Vineyards. So we have a huge array. We are constantly changing what we're pouring in the tasting room. And so I just wanted you to know that since you came on site last time, the wines you tasted have probably changed. So it's time to come in again. Now, I also wanted to show you a little bit of what's new at William Chris. And pardon me, I pieced 3 pictures together. We have an outdoor area to high society now. There is an adorable deck that is very sun-friendly. Have a couple trees around it. We have a lot of people interested in coming on site and drinking wine, so we decided to make more room for you guys. And this way you can kind of enjoy an outdoor summer picnic. In addition to that, we have some new goodies on site for you. We have 3 or 4 different models of Coravin for you, and they all do different things. So the one I have is over here. This is the Model 3. We are selling the Model 3, the Model 6, and the Model 11. So come on in and ask about what the differences of those are. We also have them in several different colors. This is a great tool that I'll go into another time a little bit later, where you don't have to pull the cork off your bottle if you're not going to drink the whole thing. You can just taste 1 or 2 ounces and keep the bottle sealed for theoretically, 5 years if you wanted to. Coravin is an amazing tool that is growing. So if you have one, tell me how much you love it. And we also have other new goodies. We started to carry some 1836 products, like a cutting board, salts, and olive oil. So we're constantly bringing on new things for you. And of course, we have winery dog books now. So come on in and see what's happening in our shop, because it is ever growing. We have lots of treats there for you. And this is what the grapes are looking like right now. I promised I would show you pics of them. They are thriving. These are the Tannat vines here, and the netting you see around there is hail netting. All right. That's all the pictures I have for you. We're going to taste some wine. So we're drinking the Texas High Plains Merved from the year 2018. In my first glass, I've poured just 2 ounces. I am going to drink this straight out of the bottle today. With my second glass, I am going to decant 2 ounces. Stir it up a little bit, really introduce some oxygen in here. We're going to see how that changed from one glass to another. Now with my third glass, I'm going to do a technique called Double decanting. This is when you decant your wine and you pour it back in the bottle. Or you decant it from one decanting vessel and into another. Or you have a special tool like this that will allow you to spread the surface area out on top and then through to the bottom. Now, why would I do this? I've tasted this wine before, so I know what to expect. But I haven't decided how I want to drink it tonight. I am doing this because we are drinking a blend of 6 different vineyards tonight, and I want to play conductor. So what I mean by conductor is, with 6 different vineyards, even though it is the same grape, you have different flavors coming from each one of those vineyards, which means that you have an entire orchestra in one bottle. You have a horn section, you have a bass section, you have a woodwind section, you have a string section. You have different musical notes, flavor compounds to pull and pluck at because of what we've learned, the geography, the terroir, the microclimates, the soil. It's all changing your flavors from one place to another. So what I'm doing here is I am calling the string section out of this. I'm calling the horn section out of this, and I'm calling the woodwind section out of this. Different notes will play out based on how much oxygen I have introduced in each glass. I'm not trying to decide which one is best. I am just trying to identify what the differences are and what the full potential of this wine is. This is what's beautiful about a blend, is you can pluck at different notes. What this also means is that you have a very food-friendly wine here, because there are 6 different sections to play at. Maybe you have some spice notes coming from one vineyard. That means that you can pair something a little bit spicy with it, maybe some baby back ribs with a little spicy barbecue sauce. And then you have maybe some very fruity, really soft, lush notes coming from another vineyard. That means that you can maybe pair something a little bit more light and delicate, like a seared fish. You have so much wiggle room, and you have more pairings that will potentially go with this wine. And this is what I want to identify tonight, is how much these are changing from wine to wine. That makes sense. Now, if I were drinking a single vineyard Merved, like Farmhouse Vineyards Merved from the year 2017, I would get an amped up expression of that one vineyard. I don't want to say that a blend versus a single vineyard site is better than the other. What you get with these are different purposes. When you have a blend, you have more wiggle room, more play room. You have several different ways that you can drink this wine. And with a single vineyard expression, you are getting a powerful snapshot of one single place. Both are excellent. You can treat these wines different in both circumstances. And you're going for a little bit of a different purpose, if that makes sense. Now, I didn't have any questions from last week that I need to address, so we're going to just jump right into this. If you're doing this experiment along with me, let me know. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm tasting, just because I know that everybody's not doing this experiment with me. Oh no, Lynette! Her Merved is in her house in Fredericksburg. Oh, but she's drinking the Wanderer Series Relief Project number 2, which is great. Tell me how delicious that is. And we have Sherry drinking the 2018 Farmhouse Vineyards Merved. That's wonderful. So what we're getting from this is 6 different vineyards, including Farmhouse Vineyards, Lost Straw Vineyards, La Pradera, Moonlight Vineyards, Timmins Estate, and Leahy Vineyards. I think that was 6. So all of these are in the Texas High Plains, but each of them still tastes differently because it's vineyards that are in different soil types, subsoil types, etc., and different management styles. All right, enough talking, let's drink. So looking at the color, I know what this looks like already because I drank so much of it. It's ruby in the center and it's a little hint of garnet on the outside, which means my flavors have started to transform. Part of that is because this is aged in 100% oak, which means you get oxygen in the winemaking process. Now, 25% of that oak is new oak. So I should expect some flavor from the oak barrel, maybe a little bit of vanilla, maybe a little cinnamon spice, maybe a little nutmeg, baking spice, coconut, whatever flavors come along with that particular oak barrel. And the rest of that, 75%, is neutral oak. This means the oak barrel has been used so many times that it no longer imparts any flavor, but it is still adding oxygen to the process. So the garnet color here means that your flavor compounds have started to transform and should be getting some other flavors in here, not just fruit, fresh fruits, flowers. I should be getting maybe some earth, nut, pollen, maybe some leather or tobacco. But let's see. First sniff, tobacco. First sniff is tobacco. And when I give it a little swirl, introducing just a touch of oxygen, the fruit is starting to come out, but the fruit is really sitting back on this. It is much more of that other stuff. And honestly, that is what the grape Merved is known for. It's known for all of that other savory, gamey stuff. And then the fruit is hiding underneath. What do y'all think? Do y'all agree with me? The fruit sitting back on this, or is it very fruity to anybody? There we go. Fruit on the palate. It's tart, and then the spice and tobacco comes in after that. Now I'm going to go to my single decanted wine. I added more oxygen to this, which means that more of the flavor compounds have had an opportunity to react with the oxygen. And we'll see what that did. It wouldn't change the color. Oh, it's softer. Now the flower notes are coming out. So this is pulling at a different vineyard, I suspect. One that's maybe a little bit more delicate that was sitting underneath on this one. And decanting has allowed it to creep out and over. Yeah, this is, it's a little sexy. It's floral, it's soft, it's lush. It has a little like cherry pop. Like a cherry candy thing, which I didn't get before on the undecanted. And on the palate, it drinks much more smooth. There's the tannin has come out a little bit on this one. I didn't get as much tannin on the first one. On the second, maybe it's because it's warmed up a little bit more. There's still that tartness, but there's a little bit of dryness on either side of my tongue, which is not where I usually feel that. So that's very interesting. What's come out of this is the delicacy, the softness, the lushness, and certainly decanting is for the purpose of balancing your wine. So it is a little bit more balanced. Now, I'm going to go and see what's happened to the double decanted one to see if there has been any change or if they're fairly similar. So different. Oh my gosh. This is like incense, like a really soft rose incense, but I definitely have that like smoking incense piece coming out. Fireplace, but it's still fruity. I mean, the fruit is in balance with everything else. And maybe that's like smoldering tobacco. That tobacco I felt here was a little bit less smoky and it was a little bit tighter. And here it's really released. It's come into its own. That's so interesting. And the cherry is less candied now. The cherry is more like I took a perfectly ripe maraschino cherry and I squished it in my hand and I was just smelling my fingers afterwards. That's what it's like to me. What an odd, very specific picture, huh? And on the palate now, the acidity has almost completely come into balance. There's still a kiss of acidity on the back of my tongue, and the tannin is now present on the tip of my tongue. So I would say that the decanting actually, it pulled out the tannin a little bit more. The tannin is very silky, sandy, and very fine, but it's definitely present. And I won't say that I noticed it as much in the first. So I'm not going to recommend a specific way to decant this, but if something that I said really stuck out to you, that's how you should treat your wine. And the purpose of me doing this is first for my own benefit. This is very selfish of me. I want to fully understand how oxygen reacting with wine what happens. But I also want to make sure that everybody knows that there is no right way to treat your wines. It is different, and something I hear very often, and I've said this before. People will come to me and say, I tasted a wine at a winery and then I bought some, I took it home and it just didn't taste as good. It's because we treated it differently, which is why every single time you open a bottle of wine, if you have a Corvin, taste it first, open it, taste a little bit of it, and decide how you want to treat it based on how it's tasting. You may love it straight out of the bottle. If you don't like it straight out of the bottle, decant it, chill it down, play around with it so that it's what you want to be drinking. But don't feel like you're missing out if you haven't done what the winemaker or the sommelier recommended to you. I couldn't recommend that one of these is better than the other. I can only say that the one that I really want to be drinking right now is this one. This floral aroma is hitting something in my memory that brings me back in time a little bit. And that's what wine is. That's what's so beautiful about wine, is it's taking me back in time. This is my little time machine that only goes backwards and not forwards. All right. Oh, hi, Christopher. Just seeing what y'all have said as I've been chatting away. And I think somebody had a question earlier, and I just want to make sure I find it. Yes, Aileen. We are drinking the 2018 Texas High Plains Merved. So there is Lost Draw Vineyard fruit in here, but it's blended with 5 other vineyards as well. 2018 Texas High Plains Merved. And I'll hold this up. And we're going to talk about legislation. Oh, you can't see it. Sorry. I thought that y'all would be able to see it. It says Texas High Plains. And because it says Texas High Plains on the label, that means that 85% of the fruit must come from the Texas High Plains AVA. Of course, William Chris Vineyards sources all of their fruit from Texas. We have not blended anything from outside of Texas into this wine. It is 100% Texas fruit, and in this case, it is 100% Texas High Plains fruit. We haven't blended anything from outside of that AVA, even though we could legally. All right, we have people drinking all sorts of Merved, which is fantastic. Rachel, Christopher, good to see y'all on here. Oh, and y'all are doing the experimentation with me. I'm so happy. Tell me how it's going for y'all. Did you notice the same things that I did from a glass to glass? Yeah, different on the palate for the third glass. It changed completely over this. And the tartness has gone away on the double decant. So that says if you want a refreshing wine one day, maybe don't decant it. Maybe don't double decant it. If you want all the tartness gone from your wine, decant and decant until the tartness kind of falls back and the acidity comes into balance with everything else. Fantastic. Awesome. Alana, yes, Texas High Plains. We are sourcing from 6 different vineyards here. I had to write them down so I could remember them. Timmins Estate, Farmhouse Vineyards, Moonlight Vineyards, Leahy Vineyards, Bingham Family Vineyards, and La Pradera. So those are all in the Texas High Plains, all roughly from the same area in the Texas High Plains, actually. These are vineyards that we have made single variety Merved from, but in this, we decided to blend it together to create a balanced table wine. This doesn't mean that it can't serve as a fine wine on your table for a special occasion, but this is meant for a different purpose. So you can see what all of the Texas High Plains tasted like. And you can also see, if you go on our website, you'll see that we have 5 single vineyard Merveds on our website. You can get a snapshot from single vineyard to single vineyard to single vineyard. So go on our website and check those out. If you'd like, you can order yourself a 6-pack of just Mourvèdre because we have 6 Mourvèdres available on our website. I want to see y'all picking up some of those so that you can do the ultimate vineyard to vineyard site pairing of the same grape, which is Merved. All right. So we are going to talk about how Merved came to be. So this is a difficult topic for me to talk about, so bear with me as I struggle through this. So we are going to talk about how Merved came to be, as well as other grapes around the world. So we're going to go back 9,000 years. So 9,000 years ago is when the first proof of vineyard management, vineyard cultivation was found. And this is in Southwest Asia. This is where we assume wine grapes originally came from. This is a long time ago, so it's not completely proven that that is where they came from, but that's the earliest signs that we saw vines being cultivated. When you are cultivating vines, you are pulling clippings of desirable grapes, planting it in rows, training it so that you get similar traits from grapevine to grapevine. Now, we've seen that these grapes, they cross with each other, they have little grape babies, and they create new grapes that have different personalities. This is when we get into different it's called cultivars and varieties. So this is how we got Merved. Two grapes had a baby, and the baby was Merved. It had a different set of characteristics, including structure, flavor profile, but also disease resistance, way that it grows, how tight the clusters of grapes are, what the leaf shapes are. So we have cultivars popping up, one cultivar being Merved. Now, we don't know scientifically what the parents of Merved are, at least I don't. But this is how we have gotten to have so many tens of thousands of different grape varieties around the world. Now, Southwest Asia is where we assume all this started in 7,000 BC. Around 5,000 BC is when we saw proof of grapes coming into Greece. After that, they moved into Italy, and this was about 1,000 BC. And in 500 BC is when we saw the first proof that Phoenicians had brought grape varieties into Spain, one of these being Mourvèdre. So this is where we first saw Merved popping up. It popped up in Spain in a region called Alicante, which is one of Merved's names. Merved has 95 different names. Merved is one of them. Alicante is another. In Spain, it is often called Monastrell. And this is where Merved's fame started. It became well known in Spain, where it was a hot climate. You had a decent amount of water in the soil, but ultimately Merved became known in Spain in about 500 BC. Now, around very soon after that, these grapes started to go north into France, which is where Merved got its French name, Merved. And this is what the Tax and Trade Bureau recognizes Merved as, which is why we call it Merved and not Monastrell. So in France around that time, that's when the Greeks started to really cultivate different vineyard sites, and the Romans came through and wrote down basically the science of grape growing, how to treat your grapes, how to tend to them, how to have consistently good fruit, how to cross species, et cetera, et cetera. So around this time in the early hundreds, this is when most of our grape science of training vines and viticulture came to be. It was Spanish missionaries that brought the Merved grape from Spain all the way over to the US. And this was in 1700s. So this is the birth of Merved in the United States. And now it is grown in south of California. It's grown largely in Washington. And of course, it's growing in Texas. But why? What was Merved cultivated for? What were the properties that people saw were desirable that led it to be planted widely in Spain, that led it to be brought up to France, that led it to be brought over to the US? There had to be desirable characteristics that made the Phoenicians bring it, that made the Greeks and the Romans study it, and that made Spanish missionaries feel like it was worth bringing over here. And I will tell you in a moment after I've taken a sip of wine and read some more of your questions. I hope I'm building up some anticipation so you know that it's going to be very interesting. So we have people talking about Annie's Block Merved. If you would like some Annie's Block Merved, shoot me an email at kelseykr@williamchriswines.com. Oh, Rachel, y'all tasted some Merved and Temecula. That's awesome. Tell me how Temecula tastes different than Texas. What's the Merved like over there? Mary, we have you drinking Skeleton Key Red because you're out of Merved, which means you need to go get some more. Awesome. No major questions. I know this is a lot of information, so I want to give y'all a break from it. But please ask any questions if I've said something that was a little difficult to understand. Now, before I go on, I want to just share with you the grapes that originated in Southwest Asia, theoretically. We're talking about Vitis vinifera. This is the species that we drink. It is known as a European species. Vitis labrusca is another species in the same genus. These are grapes that originated in America. So when I'm talking about grapes and grapes having babies with each other and creating new grapes, you can do that two different ways. You can have a Vitis vinifera vine cross with another Vitis vinifera vine and create something like Mourvèdre or Cabernet Sauvignon or Sauvignon Blanc, etc. Or, and this is something we're going to talk about a lot next week, you can have a Vitis vinifera European grapevine cross with a Vitis labrusca vine or another Vitis species, and it will create what's called a hybrid. This is an American and European grape crossing. This is extremely beneficial for grapes that are growing in the US because that American heritage will protect it from certain diseases, will make it maybe more suitable to US soil versus the European grapevines being planted in European soil. That can be a tough thing to take someone out of one place and put them in the ground in a completely different country. A lot of grapes can't survive or can't be as successful. Merved is a crossing. It's not combined with Vitis labrusca. It is 100% Vitis vinifera. This is a European grape that we have redomesticated in America. Specifically in Texas, California, and Washington. It can be successful in American soil. This is part of the reason that it's here. It is hardy, it's fairly drought resistant, and it loves, of course, sun. It loves sun. It likes full sun. It doesn't like to have too many leaves covering it, which means there's a little extra vineyard management that you have to go through with Merved. If there's too much shade, meaning the leaves are, shading the grapes too much, the grapes won't fully ripen or they won't be as happy. And we want extremely happy grapes, which means the vineyard manager and the vineyard crew constantly going through and snipping off leaves that grow and grow and grow. The more water you give to a grapevine, the more leaves it will produce. Of course, the grapes will be happy as well, but you have to keep that in balance. So Merved loves full sun, not too much shade. Perfect for Texas, something that a lot of grapes don't have. A lot of grapes need that extra shade, or they just can't handle the sun, or they will get sunburned. Merved has a very thick skin. It has a lot of tannin in it naturally and a lot of pigment, meaning that you have basically natural sunscreen around the grape. It's also fairly drought tolerant. It does like a decent amount of water, meaning that irrigation is super, super important, which means that someone who is not a great vineyard manager and is not taking care of the irrigation of their soil, they probably wouldn't want to grow something like Merved. And have to take care to make sure the grape has enough water, but if there's a little bit less water than desirable, in a certain year, maybe there's less rain, it's very dry, Merved is very hardy. That makes it a big plus for Texas, which has droughts all the time. Not this year, but usually. So there's a couple reasons why it has found a home in Texas. Chris and Andy Timmons had a discussion about Merved. The first block of Merved that was planted by Andy Timmons for William Chris Vineyards. The conversation that Chris and Andy had was basically, we're novices to grape growing in Texas. It seems like Merved would make sense in Texas because it loves sun, it's drought tolerant, and because it responds to a lot of different places in different ways. It has a lot of personality. It has gaminess. That would pair with barbecue. Sure, why not? They planted Merved and have been on a 12-year journey with it. 13-year journey now. It has been extremely successful. But it's very interesting to hear Chris talk about what Merved has been like. He says that often the Merved does not fruit after 3 years, which is traditional for grapevines. You plant the grapevines and then you have to wait 3 years before the vine fruits. Merved can sometimes take 5 years, which means there's a little extra investment that needs to go in. And what was interesting is he said the grapes looked like they were going to die before they fruited. The vines looked kind of withered. They looked very weak. And then all of a sudden they're thriving and producing fruit. So it has a very different journey than other grapevines. But ultimately, in Texas, it grows its root systems very deep into the subsoils and almost to the bedrock, searching for more water. And it pulls minerality and nutrients from very deep soil, meaning that you can get a big concentration and shift of flavor compounds from one site to another. And this is where the William Chris Vineyards experimentation with Merved comes into play. What we found is that we can make a Texas High Plains Merved and it be delicious, but we can also take 6, 8, sometimes 12 different vineyards at a time and make Merved, bottle it from one single vineyard, and then take Merved from another vineyard and bottle that separately. And they will taste totally different because they've responded so well and changed themselves based on the soil that they're in. They are all delicious. They're all super concentrated. You get huge reward from drinking all of these different expressions of Merved. But what's spectacular about it is that it responds so well from site to site in different ways. And other grapes just don't do that. You don't see as much of a difference from vineyard site to vineyard site. And that's the beautiful thing about Merved and William Chris, is we are on a 13 to 100-year journey with Merved from site to site to see why it happens this way in Texas in particular. And I read an article that was done about William Chris Vineyards and Chris Brundrett and Andy Timmons about why they thought Merved was great for Texas. And in that article, what they said was that Texas vineyard, people who are planting Texas vineyards, people who are working with grapes here in Texas, they are, of course, learning what they need to learn from other viticulturists around the U.S. and in Europe. Andy Timmons has done this. He's studied Washington, California, and Europe to see what needs to be done in the vineyard. But ultimately, Texas has such a different set of conditions, climate, and soil that at some point you just have to throw the book out the window and do what makes sense for Texas, which means that we're treating our grapes differently than anyone else in the world because we must. Texas is so much hotter. It's humid. It's different. We have different diseases. We have different challenges here. And that's a beautiful thing if you embrace it. And that's what Texans have done. What's really exciting is that Merved is now in one of the top 12 spots for red grapes planted in Texas between 2015 and 2019. And there was a study done by the U.S. Department of Agriculture on the increase and decrease of grapes planted in Texas and other states in the U.S. They saw that Merved increased in plantings. I think it was from 70 acres to 250 in 4 years. This means that Merved is being responded to well. Vineyard managers are seeing that it's successful in Texas, that it is managing the Texas weather and challenges very well. But on top of that, winemakers are buying it and making great juice from it. And on top of that, customers are buying it and enjoying it. And William Chris has been a big part of that growth. We all know, because we all have a million Merveds at home from William Chris now already. I know. And if you don't, go on our shop page and we can stock you up. So in conclusion, Merved is amazing. And Texas Merved is going to be, you're not going to be able to talk about Merved without saying Texas eventually. This is that 100-year journey. Texas will be defined by this grape. And this is why. You see, time for more wine. And I'm going to see if y'all had any questions. Oh, Tracy. Tracy's on a plane right now. And I'm assuming Ed is with you. They are watching this from their flight from Ohio. Or was it Utah? I'm glad that y'all could make it. Awesome. What are y'all thinking of the Merved? How is it opening up in your glass? Tell me about it. We're going to talk a little bit next about what Merved tastes like and what its characters in the glass are. But y'all tell me, what are you getting from this? I feel a little bit scatterbrained today. Anybody else? This is a weird day. I definitely need this wine. So Rachel, Temecula Merved wasn't as bold for sure. Slightly more fruity and light. But of course, you prefer the Texas ones. Thanks very much. That's interesting that it was lighter. It's interesting that Texas is such a hot place, but what we're getting known for as far as Merved is lighter-bodied Merveds than you see in Europe. And this isn't a bad thing. It's not like we can't get that intensity. It's that Merved, responding to Texas soil, produces something lighter, fresher, a little bit more fruity maybe, but also doesn't need to be aged as long. And the European versions of Merved definitely take time to age, and we'll talk about why. Utah, Tracy, thanks for... Alana, I agree. This is the wine that sold me on William Chris Vineyards. And Aileen, great question. What's the lifespan of Merved? And I will answer that after one more sip. So the lifespan of Merved is tied to what it tastes like, but also what the structure of Merved is. And I'm going to tie this in with what we were going to talk about anyway. And that is what Merved was domesticated to become. So when this grape was planted in rows in a vineyard originally, what the people planting it saw was that it was deep in color, lots of pigment, high in tannin, tons of sandpaper, tons of that grittiness that kind of sucks all the water out of your mouth, which means that if you're a Cabernet Sauvignon lover, this is a great alternative. It has that structure. It's known for preserving its acidity pretty well, which is why we get ripe fruit here and lots of body, but we still have that tart tinge in the back. And remember last week we talked about acidity. When you're picking grapes, your sugar is increasing as exposure to the sun and warmth is building up the sugar in the grapes. And as that's happening, acidity is falling. So you're harvesting when your sugar has risen and your acidity has fallen to a balanced rate. Now, if it's too hot and your grapes are ripening really fast, it's really, really challenging to pick here and not here. Because with sun and warmth, your sugar's building up a lot. It means your acidity is falling. Merved has the unique ability to have preserved acidity, so it's more likely to get your grapes here. Now, this also requires great vineyard management. It takes people who are kind of towing the line to wait one more day to see if the acidity will fall just to the right level, but are catching it at the right time so they're not going one day too far and getting something like this, if that makes sense. So what you get with this high tannin and balanced acidity is usually very big body. High alcohol can sometimes happen. With that comes really jammy fruits. When you have something that's less jammy, you're getting red and sometimes black fruits like blackberry. You're getting gaminess, and this is what Merved has been associated with, is smokiness, gaminess, a savoriness, which is why this is quite savory. When I smelled it, it wasn't fruit on top. It was all that other stuff. And that's what Merved is known for. And it's also known for flavors like black pepper and violet. So it has this unique complexity. It has the ability to deepen a blend. And this is how it's used in France. In France, you have fruity grapes like Grenache and peppery grapes like Syrah. You blend in a little bit of Merved, and all of a sudden you have a deep wine, dark in color. It adds a little bit of acidity, also tannin, and it adds a little gaminess. And this is what makes Chateauneuf de Pape wines delicious, Rhone wines fantastic. The wines from the south of France typically have a little bit of Merved blended in. Now, this style has become so common that you see GSM blends being very common around the entire world. Australia, Washington's well known for them. We even have a GSM blend at William Chris Vineyards. This is Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. So these have such a specific concentrated character that they've become famous together. When you plant these grapes in Texas, they have such unique personality, but also such intense concentration that we can take them out of the blend and have a single variety Merved in the glass and it be balanced on its own. This doesn't need Grenache or Syrah in it. It's delicious by itself. So is the Farmhouse Vineyards Merved that we've made. So is the Lost Draw Vineyards Merved. So is the Annie's Block Vineyard, the Annie's Block Merved coming from William Chris Vineyards. That's why we have so many of these and why they've been so successful. In Texas, we don't have to blend this in. And that's why we've really, really started to embrace it, is because it's a point of difference to the rest of the world. This is something that not everyone else can do. And that's because it's so suited to Texas terroir and climate. So, and Aileen, this was a very long-winded way to get to your point. What is the lifespan of Merved? It depends where you're getting your fruit from. Because it's so different, you're European, and we'll pick a specific region. In France, Bandol, Bandol. This is a region in France that legally requires 50% of their wines to be made with the grape Merved. They have embraced it. That is the grape to beat in Bandol. They make some of the most age-worthy Merveds in the entire world. They are tannic. They are intense. They require sometimes 20, 30 years of aging before they are ready to drink. And by ready, I don't mean that you can't drink it earlier. I mean that that's the point at which they are recommended to open because they'll be balanced. As you age wine in bottle, the tannin slowly softens because your pigment and your tannin is bonding together and falling to the bottom to become sediment. This kind of releases all of your flavor compounds from that really tough, gritty tannin and allows you to open the wine and have a balanced wine. But that's after 20 years, a lot of the time. In Texas, this is drinking immediately. It doesn't have as high a tannin. It doesn't have as high a body. It's medium bodied. This isn't because we're treating it one way or another. This is just how it responds to Texas soil. And as a comparison, if you've had Tannat, it's very similar. Tannat in somewhere like Uruguay requires 20 plus years of aging, but Tannat in Texas doesn't require nearly as much. Now this Texas High Plains Merved is particularly soft. I would say it's ready to drink now, but it could probably go on another 5 years. But this is a blend for a reason. It's meant to be an everyday, fantastic drinking wine. So don't save this for too long. Drink it and enjoy the journey that it goes through. Something like the Farmhouse Vineyards Merved has a little bit more tannin, it has a little bit more body, it has a little bit more bright acidity. That one maybe could go on for 8 years. Keep in mind that we've been making wine for 13 years now. We haven't seen the full potential of our Merveds. We can only assume at this point how ageable our wines are. And as an example, I am in love with our 2014 Enchanté. It's a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Petit Verdot. It is delicious to drink right now, but it could probably go on longer. It still has tannin, it still has acidity. That will carry it longer. but I have no idea how long at this point because we're at the beginning of our journey. And this is why it's important to start your Texas wine journey now, because you are witnessing the future and history. We know that Texas will be a successful wine industry going forward because we're already making wines like this. Where we're going to go from here is anyone's guess. And I would probably ask Chris Brundrett and Bill Blackman and Andy Timmons and Jim Camas first, but let's speculate on that together. How long do you think Merved could go for? How tannic is it? How acidic is it? How much color does it have? That's what's going to define how long it will last. I love this grape so much, from all over the world. And just so y'all know, we are making Merved. Well, we are making Merved in Texas, but others are making Merved in Australia, Washington, Spain, and France. And those are probably the primary regions for Merved right now. We have some GSM lovers, Grenache, Syrah, and Merved. Aileen, I hope that answered your question about the lifespan of Merved. I'm so happy that some of y'all tried Merved for the first time with William Chris. Definitely continue your experimentation with William Chris Vineyards, Merveds, but also dip in around the entire world, see how they're different. I think trying Merved from Bandol and Spain, some Monastrell and Australian Merveds is just going to make you fall more in love with Texas Merved. So I challenge you to drink a little bit of all of it. And then, of course, drink our GSM blends. The next GSM blend we're going to taste is the Artist Blend, and that's 2 weeks from now. So if you don't have that bottle, make sure you get it. So you can go onto our shop and get the 4 wines from this week in the next 3 weeks, or you can just buy that bottle by itself. So on the shop right now, we have a 2015 Salt Lick Merved, and that I think we're close to being out of. That is a 6-year-old wine. So I'd love to see some of y'all pick that up and just experience what a Merved with a little bit of age on it tastes like. That is from Salt Lick Vineyards. Jennifer, your question is, how many different Merveds does William Chris make? A lot is the very specific answer. Right now, we have 5 different single vineyard Merveds that are available for purchase. I think Annie's Block Merved is still on the website. If it's not, let me know, because we have a couple more bottles of that. We are tasting one in the tasting room right now, Farmhouse Vineyards. The rest of the Merveds that we have made, we are currently out of. We are constantly releasing those. So if you're part of our membership, what you're getting in probably almost every single shipment is a single vineyard Merved. At any one time, I would say we've probably had 12 at the most. But man, thinking about all the Merveds we've probably made, average 10 per year, and we've been making 10 per year probably 6 or 7 years. There have been so many different renditions of Merved from different vineyards and different vintages. And I can say vintage makes a big difference because Merved is responding to climate and soil and terroir so specifically. Your 2017, even High Plains Merved was totally different than the 2018 Texas High Plains Merved. They had a very big personality difference, and that extends to the 2017 Farmhouse Merved versus the 2018 Farmhouse Merved. So your journey is endless here with Merved. But to more specifically answer your question, we are constantly working with different new vineyards. So, we don't have a book that we go by. There's no recipe. We don't make Merved from one single vineyard every single year as a rule. We experiment and we play around, but definitely ones that we have been familiar with for a while are La Pradera Vineyards Merved, Farmhouse Vineyards Merved, Lost Straw Vineyards, Timmins Estate, all of Andy Timmins Vineyards. Moonlight Vineyards is one that we just started working with in the last couple of years. So that's a new Merved that we have added to our portfolio. So the possibilities are endless. We make many is the real answer to that question. All right, I'm just taking a look at more of your questions. Drink some more wine with me. Catherine, I love that. You have to drink it immediately because the wine bottle doesn't fit in the wine fridge. Yeah. What an oddly shaped bottle, huh? This is called a Burgundy bottle shape. Burgundy is a region in France that's known for Pinot Noir. This is the bottle shape that we've chosen for our Merveds because they are so special to us. They're unique. They have a unique bottle space. They don't fit in the wine fridge, which is not a bad thing. And Christopher brought this up earlier, and I'll talk more on his comment. He said that in a conversation we last had, I said, if you don't have a wine fridge, don't worry about putting your wines there. Put them under your bed. And this is because the temperature in your bedroom is often more consistent than the rest of your house. This is just my general, this is what I found, is that my kitchen fluctuates in temperature. Your bathroom fluctuates in humidity and temperature. Your living room, often, if you're in it, you probably have your temperature lower, but if you're not in your living room, you have it a little bit higher. But in your bedroom, you typically have a consistent cool temperature. So I put my wine bottles under my bed, especially my Merved bottles that don't fit in my wine fridge. I tuck them under my bed where it's dark. There's always a dust ruffle around it, so they're pretty safe. That's also where I age my wines because I forget about them. I'm not going to go under my bed and, pull out bottle after the bottle to drink on a nightly basis. That's where I'm aging my Mourvèdres from William Chris Vineyards. And I found that to be very successful so far, but we will see. It's a big test because they haven't aged for that long yet. Kristen, your question was, what is the perfect number of years? 3 to 7. I'm sorry, there is no perfect number because wine is a living thing in the bottle. And because it depends how you're storing your wine, I can only give you an average. And this is what any wine professional will say to you, I promise. There is no perfect number. It can only be a range. Certainly there are famous vineyards that say this wine is ready to drink in 2025, but there's always a little bit of a range. All you can do is open it within that range and experience what its personality is like in an average of 5 years. So I call out ageability in fives. So this will age either 5 or 10 years. I would say closer to 5. The Farmhouse Vineyards Merved, I would say between 5 and 10 years. You could maybe go 10 years, but maybe 7.5, 8 years would be the ideal. This is when you just have to save for a special occasion. When is your 50th anniversary? Whether that's 5 or 8 years from now, pick it for a special occasion. It's going to taste best when you have it in a special occasion. If that makes sense. I'm sorry I can't get more specific, but wine just, there's no recipe. There's no one way to enjoy wine. It is always a spectrum because it's a living thing. Asia, hi. How are you and Eric liking the Texas High Plains Merved, which I know you've had many times? Rachel has 8 different William Chris Merved Reese's in their fridge. I can't believe that y'all have saved that many without drinking it all. I'm glad you have obviously stocked up. And Aileen did this same experiment with her Lost Straw Vineyards Merved, and she says she prefers the single decant, the one in the center. And that may be the mood that you're in. It may be that that's the best way to treat that wine. We won't know. All right, so we're coming to the end of our time together, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that the 2018 Texas High Plains Merved comes in a Magnum with William Chris Vineyards. And if you're not familiar with what a Magnum is, just multiply this bottle times 2. It is twice the amount of this single bottle. We do make Magnums. Maybe you haven't seen them on the William Chris Vineyards shop page because we reserve the small amount of Magnums that we make for our Magnum Club members. And yes, there is a Magnum Club. So in addition to your 100% red wine membership, that's about 4 to 5 releases per year, as many bottles as you choose. We have an add-on white and rosé club that's twice per year, but we also have a little known twice per year Magnum Club shipment. And this is an optional add-on. If you are a party person, if you have a large family, if you have a lot of weddings to go to every year because you just have a lot of friends, the Magnum Club is your best friend. Certainly, you don't necessarily need to be drinking a Magnum bottle of wine when it's just you and someone else or you and 4 people. But at Thanksgiving time, when you want to impress people with the awesome, huge bottle of Texas wine that you have, that is the time to hop onto the Magnum Club shipment. And because we're thinking of Thanksgiving, this shipment comes out in November and it comes out in April as well. So you have some for the summer, all those weddings, and you have some for your Thanksgiving holidays. If you are a part of this Magnum Club, you're getting 2 Magnum bottles per shipment. So that's equivalent to 4 bottles of wine. So you get shipped 2 bottles of our newest releases of Magnum bottles, paying $189. That is a major discount on a lot of wine, but you also get that wow factor. You get a burgundy-shaped bottle, except this tall, and you get to look cool pouring it for all of your friends. In November, we're going to release the Hunter Magnum bottle and the Enchanté Magnum bottle, I think. So this is the perfect time to join because Hunter and Enchanté are 2 of our most fabulous, best wines. And if you sign up for the Magnum Club, you can also add on a Merved Magnum of the Texas High Plains 2018. If you'd like to do this, if this is of any interest to you, if you'd like to be that party person or just want that wow factor wine, shoot me an email. Again, it's kelseykr@williamchriswines.com, and I can hook you up with any Magnums that you would like and the Magnum Club. With this comes shipping included because we really want you to be a part of it. And these are the smallest amount of bottles that we make. We make a very limited amount of these wines because it's a little known club. But also because it takes different resources to make Magnum bottles of things. So it's not something that you commonly see. We also only bottle our most special wines in the Magnum size. So typically Magnum bottles will be about $100. That's your average. So you're getting a big discount on joining that club. So if you'd like to be a part of that, you'll get 4 Magnum bottles per year, which I think is the perfect amount for a gift, a party, and a wedding. And just fun fact, Magnum bottles were originally called wedding bottles in Italy. That's what they were made for, was to throw a big party. So if you have a lot of weddings going on this year because everyone during the COVID shutdown had to push back their weddings, this is the time to join, stock up. You're going to get an awesome discount on all of these bottles that we have. And I think they run out pretty quickly, but we do have some back vintage 2014 Enchanté Magnum bottles. So if you would like some of that, just tell me, kelseykr@williamchriswines.com, and I can do all of that for you. And the last thing I'll mention about these large size bottles. So with a cork in the top of your wine, you're getting micro-oxygenation, which means a little bit of oxygen is slowly reacting with the flavor compounds and the tannin compounds and the pigments in this wine. In a Magnum bottle, it's the same amount of oxygen getting into the wine, but you have more wine. So they are more ageable. They are more ageable, which means a Merved in this bottle may go 5 years, but this same wine in a larger bottle will probably go on 10 years because it has a lot more wine to react to in the bottle. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. So indeed, the wine bottles that I have underneath my bed are often Magnum bottles. That's all I will say about that. All of y'all have a lot to look at on our shop page. We just have so many of these fantastic bottles, and we won't be drinking another Merved for a little while. So you definitely have a journey to go through, as we all do. It's my favorite journey, is the Merved journey. All right. Well, that's what I have for you today. I feel like that went by very quickly, but I also think that was a lot of information. So if you have any questions, if I said something that was confusing, which I'm sure I did, I'm happy to answer those questions. If not tonight, then next time. You're always welcome to shoot me an email and ask me, questions. I'm happy to hop on the phone and answer any questions that you have as well. So just reach out to me. I'd love to continue the conversation with this fantastic grape. All right. Oh, Alan wants to know about the cap I'm wearing. It looks like the WCD grapevine moved from the bottle to the cap. Well, yes, it did. If you notice, these are the same thing. So what I have on my cap is what Bill Blackman drew when he was 19 years old for his mother. So around the time that William Chris Vineyards opened, Bill and Chris were trying to figure out what the label would be for William Chris. And they couldn't decide. So Mary Ruth, Bill's mother, slipped the Christmas card that he'd drawn for her when he was 19, slipped it under the door and said, I think this should be the label. And so that's what it became. We put this on t-shirts and on hats so that you can be representing William Chris in the coolest, most artistic, most beautiful story type of way. So that's exactly what I have up there. So what Bill had drawn, his father was a cotton farmer. They had been in agriculture for a long time, and it was Bill who decided, and I'm sure a lot of you know this story, but I'm going to tell it for those who don't. What Bill had decided is that after studying agriculture and marketing in school, he decided that grapes would be extremely successful in Texas. And remember, this is before any of the American viticulture areas, AVAs in Texas, were defined. Texas High Plains as an AVA did not exist yet when Bill decided to first plant grapes. So he was raised as an artist. Mary Ruth was an artist as well, and her artwork graces some of our labels. So he drew a grapevine for her. What you have here is the trunk, and these are called cordons. And then that right there is a little spur, and that's where the grapes fall off. And then this is a little star because it was a Christmas card. And then this is the shadow. And that's what that's the story behind the label of William Chris Vineyards. If y'all didn't know it, then I'm happy to share that story with you. Art and wine go hand in hand, and that's kind of the story that Bill and Chris tell every time they make a bottle of wine. It is art and wine in a bottle. All right. Aileen telling us about the Magnum Club. Thanks for being a part of it. Yes, it's time to have a party soon. Hopefully, since the COVID shutdown has kind of ended, you have Magnums kind of stored up, and you're going to have a huge party with, 8 to 10, 12, 20 William Chris Magnums. But if you don't, I can hook you up and make sure that you get the amount that you need for your next party. All right, next week we're going to talk about hybrid grapes. That's when Vitis labrusca and Vitis vinifera cross with each other. Blanc de Bois is one of those hybrid grapes that's successful in Texas, very successful. So come prepared with your Blanc de Bois. We're going to chill it down and make it really easy. No big experiment. Just come with a glass and a chilled bottle of Blanc de Bois, and we're just going to sip on it and talk more about grapes together. So any questions you didn't get to ask, throw them at me next week or shoot me an email. But until then, I have to leave you. So thanks for joining from wherever you are, Utah, Plain, Texas, Fredericksburg, wherever else. It was wonderful to hear from you all tonight, not see you. And I hope you got something from this. I hope you enjoyed it. Share this with more people. And until then, check out the William Chris shop page and see if there is anything more that you want to experiment with Mourvèdre-wise. All right, guys. Bye. I'll miss y'all this week.